Michael Asari approached more slowly, smiling at the sight of his usually reserved daughter hugging the little stranger so tightly. He extended a hand to gently pat Benita's shoulder. "Hello, you must be Benita," he said kindly. "I'm Abigail's father, Michael Asari. We're sorry to show up unannounced, but Abigail was very eager to find you. I hope we're not intruding." Benita stepped back, suddenly a bit shy in the presence of the tall, well-dressed man. She recognized the surname Asare. It was a name that carried weight in the city, and she realized Abigail's family was indeed very prominent. Unsure of how to address him, she dipped her knees in a polite half-curtsy, a gesture of respect she'd been taught for elders. "Good morning, sir," she said quietly. "You're not intruding at all. I'm just happy you came." Michael noticed the deference in her posture and gave a reassuring smile. "Your friend here told us how hard you've been working to take care of your mother," he said. "We wanted to meet her, if that's all right. Perhaps we could say hello and see if there's any way we can help." At the mention of her mother, Benita immediately straightened, worry creeping back. "Yes, of course. Please come in," she replied. She led them through the narrow compound yard toward the small room she shared with Grace. The neighbors were all staring unabashedly now at the rare sight of wealthy visitors. A few women murmured to each other, likely wondering what rich folk had to do with the Owusu family. When they reached the door, Grace was already struggling to her feet, bracing herself against the wall. She had heard the unfamiliar voices and peeked outside to see her daughter walking in with a distinguished-looking man and a well-dressed girl. Grace's heart pounded. Were these people here to cause trouble? But as they got closer, she recognized Abigail from Benita's description, the braided hair, the kind face, and the man with her had an air of importance but not arrogance. "Ma'am, please don't get up," Michael said immediately upon seeing the sick woman trying to stand. He stepped into the doorway and gently motioned for her to stay seated. "We're friends of your daughter." Grace eased back down onto the edge of the mattress, frail and startled by the sudden company. "Good morning," she managed, her voice polite but anxious. Her eyes darted to Benita, who gave an encouraging nod. "You are most welcome. Please, what is the matter?" She feared that perhaps her daughter had unknowingly gotten entangled in something. Why else would a wealthy man and his child come here? She coughed and then asked with worry, I hope there's no problem, sir." Michael quickly shook his head. He stepped inside the tiny room, noticing how it barely fit the bed, a wooden chair, and a stove in the corner. The air was close and hot inside. No problems at all. I apologize if we startled you. My name is Michael Asare. My daughter Abigail told us how kind your daughter was to sell her some oranges and how hard she has been working because you've been ill." Grace's eyes widened as realization dawned. She looked to Abigail, who stood beside her father. The well-dressed girl smiled and waved a little, shy now that they were in the close quarters of the Owusus' humble home. "You must be the Good Samaritan my daughter spoke of," Grace said softly, directing a grateful look at Abigail. "Thank you for helping my Benita yesterday. She came home so happy and relieved because of you." Abigail blushed slightly at the praise. "I didn't do much, ma'am. I just bought some oranges and wanted to help a bit," she replied earnestly. Michael glanced at the medicine packets on a small makeshift shelf and the few groceries, clear evidence of how the money had been spent. He saw how pale and fragile Grace looked, and his heart went out to the little family. "Mrs. Owusu," he said gently, "Abigail was very moved by your situation. We know life has been hard on you lately. If you'll allow us, we'd like to help. Perhaps the first step is to get you feeling better. Have you been to the hospital? Are you getting any treatment for your illness?" Grace lowered her eyes, ashamed to admit they couldn't afford more than occasional clinic visits. I have seen a doctor at the public clinic nearby, sir," she said. "They gave some prescriptions. My daughter just bought me medicine that helps with the symptoms, as you can see." She gestured to the cough syrup and pills. "But I haven't been able to do the full treatment or tests they recommended. I'm afraid I don't even know exactly what's wrong, just that I'm too weak to work." Michael exchanged a quick glance with Abigail, confirming what he suspected. Grace likely needed thorough medical attention that was beyond their means. He nodded. "All right, let's not delay then. We can take you to a good hospital right now to get you checked properly." Grace looked up, startled by the immediacy of the offer. "Right now?" she echoed, uncertainty in her voice. She had been ill for months, but the thought of going to a big hospital was intimidating, especially with no money. "Sir, I appreciate it deeply, but I have no way to pay." Michael raised a hand lightly to stop her. "Please don't worry about that. I'll take care of the expenses. It's the least we can do. I have a good doctor friend at Ridge Hospital. We'll make sure you get the care you need." Tears sprang to Grace's eyes at this unexpected generosity. She was too weak to protest much anyway, and she knew she desperately needed proper treatment. "God bless you," she whispered, overcome. "I don't even know how to thank you." "No thanks needed," Michael assured her with a kind smile. He turned to the doorway and gestured for his driver, who had remained near the car, to come assist. "Let's get you to the car. Take your time." Abigail eagerly stepped forward to help too. She took Grace's thin arm over her own shoulders, while Michael supported her other side. Together they helped the sick woman stand and walk out of the stifling room. Grace was embarrassed to lean on the young girl and the man, but they made it seem so natural that she slowly relented and allowed herself to be guided. As they emerged, the neighbors looked on in astonishment. Some whispered prayers for Grace's recovery. Others simply gawked at the well-known businessman Michael Asare, helping the ailing single mother who lived among them. In a matter of minutes, Grace was carefully seated in the back of the plush SUV. Abigail climbed in beside her, holding her hand reassuringly. Benita, after locking up their home, got into the car as well. She sat on the other side of her mother, hardly believing that just yesterday they had had no hope, and now they were riding in a luxury vehicle to the hospital with an actual chance of her mother getting better. Michael took the front passenger seat. The driver had opened the doors and now got behind the wheel. He instructed the driver to head to Ridge Hospital, one of Accra's reputable medical centers. The engine purred to life, and they carefully navigated out of the slum lanes onto the main road. As the car drove off, Grace closed her eyes, silently letting tears of gratitude slip down her cheeks. She felt the gentle squeeze of her daughter's hand in hers, and on the other side, little Abigail's small but comforting hand holding her arm. In the quiet space of the car, as the city rushed by outside, Grace prayed that this kindness was real and lasting, and not a beautiful dream from which she would soon wake. At the hospital, a flurry of activity surrounded Grace as nurses and a doctor took charge of her care. Tests were run, x-rays were taken, and an IV drip was set up to rehydrate her. Benita and Abigail sat in the waiting area just outside the examination room, the two girls side by side in plastic chairs. Benita's hands were clasped tightly together, her nails digging into her palms out of worry. Though she trusted Mr. Asare's promise, hospitals frightened her. She had never been in a big private hospital before, and everything smelled sharply of antiseptic and felt cold. Abigail noticed her anxiety and gently placed her own hand over Benita's, offering a comforting squeeze. "She'll be okay," Abigail whispered, giving her a reassuring smile. "My dad knows the doctor here. They'll do everything they can to help your mom." Benita nodded silently, grateful not only for the words but for Abigail's presence itself. In a matter of days, this girl had transformed from a stranger into someone like a sister. The warmth of Abigail's friendship was something she hadn't realized she was missing in her life of adult responsibilities. After what felt like hours but was probably only 1 hour, Michael emerged from the examination area with the doctor. Grace had been admitted for treatment and observation. The doctor, a kindly middle-aged woman, explained to Benita that her mother had a severe respiratory infection that had worsened due to malnutrition and exhaustion. "We're going to treat the infection aggressively and build up her strength with proper nutrition," the doctor said. "She should start feeling better in a week or two, but full recovery will take time and rest." When Benita heard that her mother would recover, she broke down in tears of relief. She found herself leaning into Michael Asare's side, sobbing out her gratitude. Michael patted her back gently, comforting her as a father would. "It's all right, my dear," he said softly. "Your mother is in good hands now." Over the next week, Grace remained in the hospital receiving treatment. Michael had insisted she be given a private room, and he covered all the medical bills without a second thought. Every day, young Abigail would urge her father to drive her to the hospital to visit. They often picked up Benita from home on the way, so she wouldn't have to walk the long distance or pay for transport. Despite her initial pride and hesitation to accept so much, Grace soon realized how genuine and caring the Asare family was. Lying in a clean hospital bed, with an IV delivering strong antibiotics into her veins and nutritious meals provided, she felt strength returning that she hadn't had in months. One afternoon, as Grace propped herself up on pillows, she watched with misty eyes as Abigail and Benita sat at the foot of the bed giggling over a game of cards. The two girls had become inseparable in such a short time. They often brought laughter into the hospital room, with Abigail teaching Benita a clapping game from her school, or the two of them whispering and then bursting into fits of laughter over some inside joke. It warmed Grace's heart to see her daughter act her age for once, smiling, playing, and carefree, even if only for a few moments at a time. Michael came by whenever he could, sometimes during his lunch break from work or in the evenings. He always brought something: fresh fruits, a new set of comfortable night clothes for Grace, or textbooks for Benita, saying that she might like to read when not with her mother. Under his and Abigail's encouragement, Benita even tried on one of Abigail's spare school uniforms one day as a whim while visiting Grace. It almost fit, if a little loose. The sight of her daughter in a crisp uniform again made Grace cry tears of joy. It felt like a glimpse of a future that once seemed lost. Finally, Grace was well enough to be discharged. She had gained some healthy weight, her fever was gone, and her cough was under control. Before they left the hospital, Grace insisted on finding the words to express her gratitude to the Asares. She sat up on the edge of the bed, dressed in a simple new dress that Abigail and Michael had bought for her. When Michael entered the room that final morning with discharge papers, Grace motioned for her daughter and Abigail to give her a moment alone with him. The girls stepped out into the hall. "Mr. Asare," Grace began, her voice filled with emotion. She carefully stood, still a little unsteady, but determined. "I don't have enough words to thank you. You saved my life, and you have given my daughter hope again. I know you are a very busy man and have many responsibilities, yet you treated us as if we mattered." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "I am forever grateful. I promise that I will do everything in my power to rebuild our lives from here so that your generosity is not wasted." Michael shook his head and smiled kindly. "I'm very happy to see you feeling better, Mrs. Owusu. That's thanks enough for me. And please call me Michael. We're friends now." Grace managed to smile back. "Only if you'll call me Grace," she replied gently. Emboldened, she continued, "I want you to know, I am not someone who likes to depend on others. My late husband and I always worked hard to stand on our own feet. But when he passed, things became very difficult. I tried my best for Benita, but I fell short when my health failed. You've given me a second chance. I don't intend to waste it." Michael was impressed by Grace's resolve. He respected her pride and understood how hard it must have been for her to accept help. "I admire your spirit," he said. "And I have a suggestion. Let's make sure you can get back on your feet properly. Have you thought about what you might do once you're fully recovered? Did you have a trade or business before?" Grace nodded slowly. "I used to sew and tailor clothes in the market years ago. I was a seamstress. I even dreamed of having a small shop, but life had other plans." She sighed. "I'd do anything that could earn an honest living now, even if not sewing. I just want to be able to support my daughter and not let her suffer again." Michael's eyes lit up as he formulated an idea. "How about we help you start a small business? You mentioned sewing. If that's what you know best, maybe we can get you a sewing machine and some materials to get started again. Or if you'd prefer something else, we can discuss it. I want to make sure you and Benita are in a position where you won't have to worry about basic needs." Grace was taken aback by yet another extraordinary offer. "Oh, sir, Michael, this is too much." She placed a hand over her heart, tears gathering again. She had cried more out of gratitude in the past week than in the last year of hardship. It's more than I could have ever hoped for. If I could sew again, that would be wonderful. I could make dresses to sell, perhaps even supply one of the shops. I know a place in the market where I might rent a small stall, if I had the capital for it. Consider that done, Michael said with a pleased nod. We'll get you set up with a sewing machine, fabrics, and help you rent that stall. You can pay it forward by making beautiful clothes for the community. That's how you can thank me. He winked kindly. Just then, the door swung open and Abigail and Benita popped their heads in, unable to contain their curiosity any longer. Is everything okay? Abigail asked, looking between her dad and Grace. Grace laughed softly and beckoned the girls in. Yes, everything is fine. In fact, everything is wonderful. She opened her arms and both girls came over, Abigail taking her hand and Benita standing by her side. Grace looked at her daughter tenderly. Benita, Mr. Asare Michael has offered to help me start my sewing business again. Mama might be making dresses soon. Benita's face lit up with pure delight. Really? Mama, that's amazing. It felt like every piece of their misfortune was being turned around. She looked at Michael with the deepest respect and happiness shining in her eyes. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Michael gave a modest shrug. It's my pleasure. You two deserve a fresh start. He then continued, and there's one more thing we need to arrange. School. He looked at Benita kindly. You should be back in school as soon as possible, young lady. At this, Benita's excitement faltered a little. She had been dreaming of it, but she knew their reality. I want to, very much, she said softly. But school fees, uniforms, books. Mama doesn't have a job yet. It might be a little while before... Nonsense, Michael interrupted gently. We'll not wait. Education is too important to delay. I've already made a few calls. He smiled at Abigail. Your school has agreed to take on a new student, a bright girl who just needs an opportunity. Abigail gasped in happy surprise. Daddy, you mean it? Benita can come to my school? She practically bounced on her toes and threw her arms around her father's arm. He chuckled. Yes. She'll start in the new term, which is a couple of weeks from now. In the meantime, we'll get her uniforms, books, everything she needs. I've spoken to the headmistress. She's willing to give a scholarship slot, and I'll cover any extra expenses. Benita was stunned. She had been prepared to start at any humble public school once her mother was better and earning again, but to be offered a place at the prestigious private academy that Abigail attended was beyond her imagination. I don't know what to say, she managed, voice shaking with a mix of joy and disbelief. This is like a dream. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Abigail. Tears brimmed once more, and she wiped them quickly, smiling through them. I promise I'll study very hard and make you all proud. I won't waste this chance. I know you will, Abigail beamed, taking Benita's hands and squeezing them. Oh, we're going to be in the same school. I can show you around and you'll meet my friends. You'll love it, I know. She was as happy as if the gift had been given to her, not to someone else. Within the next few days, Michael's plans were put into motion. True to his word, he purchased a sturdy sewing machine and arranged for a delivery of various colorful fabrics to Grace's new shop space. A small stall was rented for her at the marketplace, not far from where she used to work years ago, and soon Grace found herself surrounded by familiar comforts, the hum of the sewing machine, the vibrant patterns of wax print cloth, and customers who were already curious about the new tailor in the market. During this time, Michael also found a new apartment for the Owusus. He knew returning to the old room in the slum would only risk Grace's health again, and would not be an environment conducive for a child studying. So he arranged for a clean, modest 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood, paying the rent up front for the first year. When Grace and Benita first saw their new home, they were speechless. It had a proper roof that didn't leak, solid walls with a coat of paint, and even electricity that didn't flicker constantly. There was a tiny kitchen area and a bathroom of their own with running water, amenities they had never had before. The day they moved in, Grace sank to her knees on the tiled floor of the living room and simply cried tears of gratitude, touching the walls as if to confirm they were real. Benita helped her mother up, and they embraced tightly, each thanking God and the Asaris for this fresh start. For the first time, Benita had a small room of her own where she could study by a lamp at a proper desk that Abigail had helped pick out for her. When the new school term arrived, Benita donned her crisp blue and navy uniform, her satchel filled with pristine notebooks and pencils. Standing in front of the mirror, she could hardly recognize herself. She looked so much like any other schoolgirl, not a street hawker anymore. Grace fussed proudly over her, combing her hair and tying a neat ribbon to match the uniform. It was a bittersweet moment. Grace felt an ache that her husband wasn't there to see their daughter finally have a chance at the education they had dreamed of for her. But she also felt enormous relief and pride that their fortunes had turned. Abigail and her father arrived that morning to pick Benita up for school, wanting her first day to be completely smooth. The two girls sat in the back of the car, identical uniforms making them look like sisters. Abigail chattered excitedly, telling Benita the names of teachers and which subjects were fun, promising to introduce her to a nice group of girls at lunch. Benita listened with a grateful smile, nerves fluttering in her stomach, but soothed by her friend's enthusiasm. When they arrived at the school gates, a place Benita had only ever peered at from afar, Abigail practically pulled her along, proudly showing off the campus. Some students gave curious looks at the new girl walking beside one of the most well-known girls in school. Word had spread that a scholarship student would be joining. But any whispers were quickly quelled by Abigail's presence. She stayed protectively at Benita's side, making sure she found her classroom and introducing her to the teacher. By the end of the day, Benita felt like she was the luckiest girl alive. She had soaked up every minute of classes, filling pages with notes. She made a couple of friendly acquaintances who warmed up to her after seeing how brilliant she was in answering a tough math question. All those months of mentally calculating change for oranges had kept her sharp with numbers. Abby and she met at break and lunch, giggling and sharing food as if they had been classmates forever. When school let out, Grace was there at the gate to walk her home. Their new apartment was close enough to the school. Grace watched from a distance as her daughter hugged Abigail goodbye and also waved gratefully to Michael, who had come to check how the first day went. It was a sight that filled Grace's chest with gratitude and a strange, unfamiliar feeling. Hope for the future. No more would her little girl have to roam the streets under the scorching sun selling oranges to survive. Benita had a new life now, one where she could just be a child again, a student with dreams, protected and supported by people who cared. As weeks turned into a couple of months, an easy rhythm settled in. Grace's health continued to improve. Her cheeks regained color and she could walk without losing breath. Her sewing stall in the market slowly gained customers, especially once Abigail and even Michael spread the word among their friends and employees about the talented seamstress producing beautiful dresses. Grace often found herself smiling through long days of work, energized by purpose rather than drained by despair. In the evenings, she would come home to their cozy apartment, cook a simple dinner with the earnings of the day, and eagerly wait for Benita to return from school to hear all the stories of what she learned. For Benita, life had transformed in the most wonderful ways. She gave her studies her all, staying up at her desk sometimes late into the night to review books, a task made much easier with electricity and a lamp. Where once her body ached from carrying fruit baskets, now it pleasantly ached from netball practice in school or from sitting at a desk solving exercises for hours. She loved every aspect of being back in school, the crisp notebooks, the challenging homework, even the morning assemblies. Often she would wake up and for a split second expect to lift a tray of oranges onto her head, only to remember with relief and excitement that she was going to class instead. Those moments never failed to make her break into a grateful smile. True to their promise, Abigail and Benita became best friends. They were inseparable during school hours and frequently together after school too. Many afternoons, after classes, Benita would go over to Abigail's house, the grand mansion that still took her breath away each time she passed through its gates. The first time she visited as a friend rather than as someone being helped, she felt shy stepping into the opulent living room with its high ceilings and expensive furniture. But Abigail pulled her along cheerfully to her bedroom, which was decorated with posters of pop stars and shelves of books and toys. The girls would do homework together sprawled on the plush rug or sometimes in the airy backyard garden under a shady mango tree. Sometimes they just relaxed and played. Abigail taught Benita how to play chess on a carved ivory chess set. Benita learned quickly, enjoying the strategy involved. In turn, Benita taught Abigail some clapping games and songs from her old school in the poorer district, and they would collapse into laughter when they missed a beat. They'd share music. Abigail had an iPod and speakers, and she introduced Benita to her favorite songs. On weekends, Michael even took both girls out to the park or to the bookstore, indulging their love for reading by buying them novels which they would both devour and discuss. During these visits, Grace was sometimes invited as well to the Asare home, particularly if Michael was hosting a dinner. Michael had grown quite fond of Grace's straightforward and humble nature. After some initial reluctance out of pride, Grace accepted a few invitations and found the Asares to be gracious hosts. She always remembered to bring a small token, perhaps freshly baked meat pies or a piece of beautiful fabric, to show appreciation without feeling like a charity case. However, not everyone in the Asare household was so enthusiastic about this blossoming closeness. Victoria Asare, while polite on the surface, remained ill at ease with how intertwined their lives were becoming with the Owusus. She had tolerated, even appreciated, the necessity of helping Grace get well and setting them up to live decently. That was charity and goodwill, which was fine in her eyes. But she hadn't anticipated that this would evolve into frequent social visits, and her daughter treating a one-time street hawker like a sister. Victoria's unease occasionally manifested in subtle ways. When the girls would race noisily down the halls, giggling and playing, she would emerge from her study with a thin smile and remind them to be careful around the antique vases, or to keep their voices down. If Benita admired a delicate figurine on a shelf, Victoria would quickly say, "That's a collector's item, dear. Let's not touch it, all right?" Not in a harsh tone, but enough to make Benita withdraw her hand and feel slightly out of place. Abigail, sharp as ever, sensed her mother's discomfort and tried to smooth things over whenever possible. She adored her mom, but she also fiercely loved her friend, and she disliked how formal and chilly her mother often was towards Benita. Once, after one such interaction where Victoria had briskly suggested that it was getting late and perhaps the Owusus should be heading home, Abigail confronted her mother in the kitchen. "Mom, why do you act that way around Benita?" she asked, arms crossed. Victoria, who had been stirring sugar into her tea, paused. "What way, darling?" "You know, like you don't really want her here," Abigail said bluntly. "She can feel it. I feel it. Every time we're having fun, you seem annoyed. She's my best friend. Can't you be happy we're friends?" Victoria sighed and set down her teaspoon. "It's not that I'm unhappy about your friendship, Abigail, but I do worry. You come from very different backgrounds. There could be misunderstandings. I just want to make sure everything stays appropriate." "Appropriate?" Abigail echoed, frowning. "Mom, we're kids. What do you think is going to happen? She's a good person. You say hello and smile, but you never really talk to her. She feels like you don't like her." "I don't dislike her," Victoria said, choosing her words carefully. "But I admit it's difficult for me to fully trust people we've helped. Sometimes people might take advantage of kindness, or they may start to feel entitled, want more. I'm just guarding our family, that's all." Abigail's face fell into an expression of disappointment. "Benita and her mom never ask for a single thing. We help them because we want to. They've been nothing but grateful. How could you think they'd take advantage?" Seeing the hurt in her daughter's eyes, Victoria softened a bit. She reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from Abigail's forehead. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being overly cautious. It's just, my experience has taught me to be careful, but I know this friendship is important to you. I'm not going to forbid it or anything." She managed a small smile. "Just promise me you'll always be sensible, okay?" Abigail gave a reluctant nod. Okay, Mum, but please try to give Benita a chance. If you got to know her, you'd see what I see in her. After that conversation, Victoria made a mild effort to be more cordial. One Saturday, she invited both girls to join her in the kitchen to bake cookies, thinking the activity might help her warm up to the new child in their life. They baked a batch of chocolate chip cookies, and though the interaction remained a bit stiff, it was progress. Benita's polite demeanor and eagerness to help with tasks did endear her slightly. Victoria found herself noting that the girl had excellent manners and a gentle way about her. However, deep down, Victoria still harbored a lingering resentment and fear. She didn't like how much influence this outsider seemed to have in her household. Michael would ask regularly about Grace's business and well-being, something he rarely did with any of their other charitable causes, and Abigail's world seemed to revolve around her new friend. A few times, Victoria had overheard her daughter excitedly say to a relative, "Benita is like the sister I never had." That made her chest tighten with an irrational pang of jealousy and alarm. Was her own daughter starting to prefer this girl's company over time with her mother? She worried. What if eventually Abigail thought of Grace like a second mother? The thoughts were perhaps irrational, but they gnawed at Victoria. The planned birthday party for Abigail's 13th birthday loomed, and with it, Victoria's anxieties worsened. She pictured inviting all her high society friends and their children, only for them to see that the party was also in honor of a girl from the slums. Would they gossip? Would it be embarrassing? She felt guilty for thinking this way, but she couldn't help it. Her pride and social image were prickling.